Captain Dae-ho Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Resilience, staring at the message that had just arrived from the Galactic Council. His hands shook slightly as he read the words for the third time. The Council was giving humanity one final choice. Give up all faster-than-light technology and accept permanent watch over their species, or face what they called corrective measures. Dae-ho had served in the human fleet for 15 years. He had seen humanity reach for the stars with hope and wonder. When they first made contact with alien species, most humans thought it would be the beginning of a golden age. Instead, it became a cage. The Galactic Council ruled over 12 ancient alien species. They had been in space for thousands of years before humans even learned to make fire. When humanity finally reached beyond Earth's solar system in 2387, the Council was not impressed. They saw humans as children who had found dangerous toys. Restricted development species, they called humanity. It sounded official and important. What it really meant was that humans could not leave their home solar system without permission. They could not trade freely with other species. They could not build the ships and stations they wanted to build. Every human invention had to be approved by the Council first. Dae-ho walked to the communication station where Officer Bo Ram-song was waiting. Her face was serious as she looked up at him. "Captain, we have Dr. Hyejin Park on the secure channel from the research station," Bo Ram said. "She says it's urgent." Dae-ho nodded and took the call. Dr. Park's face appeared on the screen. She was a small woman with bright eyes and graying hair. For the past 5 years, she had been working on something the Council did not know about. "Captain Kim," Dr. Park said, her voice excited but careful. "The dimensional fold drive is ready. We've tested it 3 times now. It works perfectly." Dae-ho felt his heart race. The dimensional fold drive was humanity's secret project. While the Council thought humans were working on simple improvements to their existing ships, Dr. Park and her team had been developing something completely new. This technology could move ships through parallel dimensions, making the Council's warp gates look like ancient history. "Are you certain it's safe for large-scale use?" Dae-ho asked. "More than safe," Dr. Park replied. "We can move entire fleets, stations, even planets if we need to. The energy requirements are actually lower than traditional warp travel." Dae-ho closed the channel and called his senior officers to the bridge. Within an hour, representatives from every human colony and ship were connected to an emergency meeting. President Jae-sung Lee appeared on the main screen from Earth. He was an older man who had led humanity through some of its darkest days. Behind him stood Admiral Kildong Jang, the head of human military forces, and Dr. So-young Choi, the chief engineer who had helped design most of humanity's hidden infrastructure. "The Council has given us 72 hours to respond, President," Lee said to the assembled group. "We can surrender our freedom forever, or we can fight a war we cannot win." Admiral Jang leaned forward. "Our military analysis shows that even with our new technology, we cannot defeat 12 species that have been fighting wars for millennia. They have too many ships, too many resources." Dr. Choi spoke next. "But we have options they do not expect. The dimensional fold drive is not just a new way to travel. It opens up entire layers of reality that they have never explored." President Lee was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that would change galactic history forever. "We are not going to fight them," he said. "We are not going to surrender to them. We are going to leave." The room fell silent. Leave? How could an entire species just leave? Dr. Park stepped forward to explain. "The parallel dimensions are not empty space. They are complete realities with their own stars, planets, and resources. We can move our entire civilization there. Every human, every ship, every station." "What about Earth?" someone asked. "We take everything that matters," President Lee replied. "We strip the planets of all our technology. We evacuate every person. We leave behind empty worlds and silent space. When the Council arrives to punish us, they will find nothing to punish." The plan was incredible and terrifying. In 72 hours, humanity would attempt something no species had ever tried before. They would move their entire civilization to a parallel dimension. Dr. Choi began coordinating the technical aspects. Every human ship would be fitted with dimensional fold generators. Every space station would be prepared for transport. On Earth, and the colonies, massive evacuation ships would collect people and essential equipment. Captain Daeho was put in charge of the military evacuation. His job was to make sure that no human technology fell into Council hands. Every computer would be wiped clean. Every advanced tool would be destroyed or taken. Even the orbital debris around human worlds would be collected and removed. The work began immediately. On Earth, families packed only their most precious belongings. On Mars, the great cities were carefully dismantled. The asteroid mining stations were stripped of their equipment. It was the largest moving operation in human history. Dr. Park worked without sleep for 3 days, installing fold drives on ships that had never been designed for such technology. Her team of engineers performed miracles, making the impossible happen through sheer determination. Meanwhile, Council surveillance networks detected massive energy readings from human space. Their automated systems flagged unusual activity, but the readings did not match any known weapons or military preparations. The Council's computers were confused by what they were seeing. On the final day, President Lee sent a simple message to the Council. Humanity chooses a third option. 12 hours later, the dimensional fold drives activated simultaneously across human space. The energy release was enormous, visible from light years away. For a brief moment, reality itself seemed to bend and twist around human worlds. Then, silence. When the Council's fleets arrived to deliver their ultimatum in person, they found solar systems scrubbed clean of human presence. Earth still orbited its sun, but its cities were gone. Its orbital stations empty shells. Mars showed signs of massive industrial activity, but no life remained. Even the smallest research outposts had been evacuated completely. The Council's admiral, an ancient being from the Nexari coalition, stood in his command ship staring at Earth's empty surface. In all his centuries of life, he had never seen anything like this. An entire species had simply vanished without firing a single shot. What the Council did not know was that their ultimatum had backfired completely. Instead of forcing humanity to submit, they had pushed humans to make a discovery that would change everything. In the parallel dimension, humanity was already building new cities, new ships, and new technologies. The exile had begun, but so had humanity's true journey to the stars. 3 months had passed since humanity disappeared, and Commander Kildong-jung's secret data caches began activating across the galaxy. The first one appeared on a Valdorian mining world where production had mysteriously dropped by 40%. Chief eyed. Engineer Veltar of the Valdorian Empire was staring at his mining reports when the human data file appeared on his computer. The message was simple. You might want to check your gravity manipulation systems. Veltar was confused. The gravity manipulators were working fine as far as he could tell. But when his team opened the sealed units for inspection, they found something shocking. Half of the critical components were human-designed upgrades that had been quietly installed over the past 5 years. The Valdorians had thought they were buying simple tools from humanity. Instead, humans had been slowly improving Valdorian technology without telling them. The upgrades were so seamless that Valdorian engineers had not even noticed them. On the other side of the galaxy, Dr. Hae-Young Shin of the Karathi Federation was dealing with a crisis of her own. The ecospheres that kept her people's worlds livable were failing. The biological balance that had taken decades to establish was falling apart. Another data cache activated, this one containing detailed information about modified Earth bacteria that had been gifted to the Karathi years ago. The bacteria were designed to help terraform hostile worlds and maintain atmospheric balance. What the Karathi had not known was that these bacteria required specific chemical signals to reproduce. The signals came from human-made supplements that had been quietly added to Karathi supply shipments. With humanity gone, the supplements stopped coming. Without the supplements, the bacteria stopped reproducing. Without the bacteria, the ecospheres began to collapse. Similar problems were appearing across the galaxy. The Zephyrian trade routes that connected dozens of star systems started producing navigation errors. Their ships were getting lost in space, arriving at wrong destinations or failing to arrive at all. The Zephyrian Navigation Guild called an emergency meeting. Guildmaster Jexenol was an ancient being who had been plotting star routes for 3 centuries. He had never seen navigation systems fail so completely. "The patterns make no sense," he told his senior navigators. "Our AI systems are calculating routes that lead nowhere. Ships are missing jump points by millions of kilometers." Then another human data cache activated in their main computer center. The file explained that human programmers had quietly upgraded Zephyrian navigation AI with advanced pattern recognition systems. The upgrades had been so helpful that the Zephyrians had become completely dependent on them. The human systems used quantum probability calculations that were far beyond normal Zephyrian mathematics. When humanity left, they took their quantum computers with them. The navigation AI was trying to run impossible calculations on hardware that could not handle them. Commander Kildong Jung had planned these revelations carefully. Before the Exodus, he had served as humanity's liaison to several alien species. His job had been to build relationships and facilitate trade. What he had really been doing was mapping the galaxy's technological dependencies. Jang had discovered something that shocked him. Galactic civilization was far more fragile than anyone realized. The great alien empires had been in space for thousands of years, but they had become set in their ways. They built the same types of ships, used the same manufacturing processes, and solved problems the same way their ancestors had. Humanity was different. Humans were natural problem solvers who loved to tinker with existing systems. When aliens asked for help with technical issues, humans did not just fix the immediate problem. They improved the entire system and made it work better. Over 50 years of contact, humans had quietly become the maintenance crew for galactic civilization. They fixed ancient systems that were breaking down. They improved manufacturing processes that had not been updated in centuries. They solved problems that alien engineers had given up on. The aliens had thought they were helping primitive humans by allowing limited trade and technology sharing. In reality, humans had been keeping advanced alien civilizations from falling. A part engineer So-Young Choi had documented all of this in her final transmission before humanity's departure. Her message was broadcast to every major alien government simultaneously. "We were never just the newest species in the galaxy," her recording said. "We were the maintenance crew keeping your ancient systems from falling apart. You treated us like children who needed guidance. Actually, you needed us more than we needed you." The message included detailed technical reports showing the extent of human integration into alien infrastructure. Medical nanobots treating plague victims on 12 worlds were human-designed. Quantum computing cores managing interstellar communications were running human algorithms. Even the massive Nexus Gate network that connected the galaxy's core worlds was stabilized by human-built systems. The Galactic Council called an emergency session, but the meeting quickly descended into chaos. Representatives from different species began accusing each other of hiding their dependence on human technology. "The Valdorians knew their mining was dependent on human systems," shouted the Nexari delegate. "They should have warned us this could happen." "We did not know the extent of human integration," the Valdorian ambassador replied angrily. "Your own communication networks are failing just as badly as our minds." The Kelrathi representative stood up from her seat. "The Zephyrians have been hoarding human navigation improvements while our own ships get lost in space. This is sabotage. We shared everything we received from humans," the Zephyrian delegate protested. "Your species refused to upgrade your old systems." Council leader Mordak of the ancient Nexari coalition tried to restore order, but the damage was done. For the first time in 3,000 years, the species of the Galactic Council were openly fighting with each other. The economic impacts were spreading faster than anyone had predicted. Interstellar trade routes were failing as navigation systems broke down. Mining operations were shutting down as equipment malfunctioned. Medical facilities were running out of essential supplies as manufacturing systems failed. Dr. Tai Min Ko, had been humanity's ambassador to the Council before the Exodus. In his final diplomatic report, he had included detailed proposals for technological independence that would free each species from dependence on others. Every species had rejected his suggestions as too complex or unnecessarily expensive. Now, facing system-wide failures, alien governments were desperately searching for Ko's old proposals. They found the documents in the Council archives, labeled as human suggestions, filed for future consideration. The proposals were indeed complex. They required species to completely rebuild their technological infrastructure using new principles. They demanded cooperation between traditional enemies. They called for sharing resources and knowledge in ways that went against thousands of years of tradition. Most importantly, Ko's proposals required species to think about technology the way humans did, as interconnected systems that worked together rather than isolated tools that operated independently. The first interstellar war in 4 centuries erupted when a Valdorian mining ship accidentally entered Nexari territory. The ship's navigation system had failed and the crew was genuinely lost. But automated defense systems, also malfunctioning due to missing human components, identified the ship as an invasion force. The brief battle that followed destroyed both ships and killed hundreds of beings. Worse, it showed how quickly the galaxy could descend into chaos when the systems that maintained peace stopped working properly. As reports of the conflict spread, panic began to set in across the galaxy. If the great powers could not maintain basic navigation and defense systems, how long before civilization itself collapsed? Hidden in the parallel dimension, humanity watched these events unfold through careful observation of electromagnetic signals, bleeding through dimensional barriers. President Jae-Sung Lee and his advisors studied the reports with mixed feelings. "They are learning the hard way," Dr. Hai-Jin Park observed. "Just as we predicted they would." "The question now," said Admiral C. Kildong-jung, "is whether they will learn fast enough to save themselves." 6 months after humanity's disappearance, the galaxy was falling apart. Admiral Bo-Ram Song had predicted this exact scenario in her classified reports to human leadership. She had studied galactic civilization for years and identified its critical weakness. The ancient species had become too rigid to adapt. The Karathi Federation was the first major power to face complete collapse. Their terraformed worlds were dying as the modified Earth bacteria stopped reproducing. Without these microscopic helpers, the carefully balanced atmospheres began to shift toward poisonous combinations of gases. President Kolvex of the Karathi stood before his emergency council, watching real-time reports from their colony worlds. "Karathi Prime has maybe 3 months of breathable air left," reported his science advisor. "The outer colonies are already evacuating to emergency shelters." "What about the emergency protocols?" Kolvex asked desperately. "The protocols rely on atmospheric processors that use human-designed algorithms," came the reply. "We cannot replicate the bacterial cultures without the human genetic templates, and we cannot run the atmospheric processors without their quantum computing systems." Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. The Valdorian Empire had shut down 60% of their mining operations. Their massive industrial civilization was grinding to a halt as gravity manipulation systems failed one by one. The proud Valdorian fleet, once feared across the galaxy, was stranded in their home system because their ships could not safely enter hyperspace. The Zephyrian Trade Federation was facing an even worse crisis. Their entire culture was built around connecting distant star systems through trade and communication. Now their ships were getting lost in space, unable to plot safe courses between the stars. Several trading fleets had simply vanished, probably lost forever in the empty void between galaxies. But the most shocking failure was happening at the center of galactic civilization, the Nexus Gate network. These massive structures allowed instant travel between major worlds, forming the backbone of Council power. The gates had operated perfectly for over 2,000 years. Chief Engineer Yolmesh of the Nexari Coalition was the first to understand what was happening. While examining the quantum stabilization systems of Nexus Gate 7, he found human-built components throughout the ancient structure. "This is impossible," he told his team. "These stabilizers are integrated into systems that are older than human civilization itself. His assistant, a young engineer named Kiv Tan, had studied the technical reports from Kildongjiang's data caches. "Sir, I think the humans did not just add new systems. They carefully upgraded existing systems without telling us. Look at these quantum harmonics, they are too stable for our original technology." Yolmesh realized the terrible truth. The Nexus gates were failing because human improvements had become essential to their operation. Over decades of quiet upgrades, humans had essentially rebuilt the ancient gate network from the inside out. When humanity left, they took the knowledge of how these improvements worked. The Council's emergency session was a disaster. Representatives from all 12 species gathered in the Great Chamber on Nexari Prime, but instead of cooperation they found only blame and anger. "This is the Valdorians' fault," declared the Kilrathi ambassador, her tentacles writhing with rage. "They allowed humans to infiltrate their mining systems. This contamination spread to all of us. The Kilrathi are the ones who begged humans to help with their medical problems," the Valdorian representative shot back. "Your entire healthcare system is built on human nanobots." Ambassador Thexril of the Zephyrian Federation stood up slowly. As one of the older species, the Zephyrians commanded some respect, but even they were facing criticism. "We shared human navigation improvements with everyone who asked. It is not our fault that others became dependent on them." The Nexari Council leader, Ancient Mordak, tried to maintain order, but his own species was dealing with the worst crisis of all. The Nexus gates were not just Nexari technology. They were the foundation of galactic civilization. If the gates failed completely, the galaxy would be split into isolated clusters of star systems. "We need solutions, not blame," Mordak said, his voice heavy with centuries of weariness. "Can we recreate the human technologies?" The silence that followed was more frightening than any battle cry. Finally, Dr. Velnix of the Korathi spoke up. "We have been trying for months. Human technology is not just advanced. It is based on completely different principles. They think about problems in ways we do not understand." Chief Scientist Zorlan of the Valdorian Empire nodded grimly. "Human engineering integrates multiple systems into seamless networks. Our traditional approach builds specialized tools for specific jobs. We cannot easily copy their methods." Dr. Taemin Ko's old diplomatic reports were being studied by every major government, but his warnings were becoming reality. Ko had tried to explain that human technology was different because humans thought about cooperation differently than other species. "Most alien species develop technology to give them advantages over their neighbors," Ko had written. "Humans develop technology to solve problems for everyone. This makes human systems naturally compatible with alien technology, but alien systems often cannot work without human integration." The reports included specific recommendations for each species, showing them how to rebuild their technology to be truly independent. But implementing Ko's suggestions would require massive changes in how alien civilizations operated. The Valdorians would need to completely restructure their mining operations and learn new approaches to gravity manipulation. The Korathi would need to develop their own biological engineering systems and abandon terraforming methods they had used for centuries. The Zephyrians would need to build new navigation computers and train their pilots in completely different methods of space travel. Most challenging of all, every species would need to learn human-style collaborative engineering. Instead of keeping their technology secret and competing with their neighbors, they would need to share knowledge and work together to solve common problems. The first species to attempt this cooperation was also the first to fail completely. The hegemony of Torkesh was a proud military civilization that had never asked other species for help. When their fleet's targeting systems began failing due to missing human algorithms, they refused to admit the problem to other council members. Instead, Torkesh military leaders tried to reverse engineer human technology, using captured equipment from abandoned human bases. The attempt was a disaster. Without understanding the underlying principles, Torkesh engineers created unstable copies that failed catastrophically. The explosion of Torkesh Battle Station 3 was visible from 12 star systems. The station's power core overloaded when jury-rigged human systems interacted unpredictably with traditional Torkesh technology. 3,000 military personnel died in the blast, and the Torkesh home fleet was crippled. This tragedy sent shockwaves across the galaxy. If the mighty Torkesh military could be destroyed by technological failures, no one was safe. Panic buying began in major trade centers as species hoarded supplies they might not be able to replace. The galactic economy, already weakened by failing infrastructure, began a complete collapse. Currency values fluctuated wildly as no one knew which civilizations would survive the technological crisis. The Rim worlds, smaller civilizations that had always been ignored by the Council, suddenly found themselves in an unexpected position. Many of these worlds had worked directly with humans and had human-trained engineers who understood basic principles of human technology. Ambassador Jinho Park, of the former human colony world New Sol, had been left behind during the Exodus to monitor galactic developments. His reports back to the parallel dimension described a galaxy in free fall. The great powers are too proud to ask for help from the Rim worlds, he reported. They would rather see their civilizations collapse than admit they need assistance from species they have always considered inferior. Meanwhile, the mysterious energy readings from the abandoned human systems were growing stronger. Council scientists detected massive power signatures from the empty space where Earth's solar system had been, but they could not determine what was causing them. Unknown to the galactic powers, these energy signatures were dimensional bleed-through from humanity's new home. In the parallel dimension, humans were not just surviving, they were thriving beyond all expectations. Free from Council restrictions, human technology was advancing at an incredible rate. Dr. Hyojin Park was leading research projects that were making breakthrough discoveries every week. "We have resources here that do not exist in normal space," she reported to President Jae-Sung Lee. "The physical laws are slightly different, allowing for technologies we never could have developed in our home dimension." The question now was whether humanity should return to help save galactic civilization, or let it collapse completely and rebuild from scratch. The decision would determine the future of countless billions of beings across thousands of worlds. 1 year after humanity's departure, space itself was breaking down. Dr. Min-Ho Yoon had calculated this outcome before the Exodus, but even he was surprised by how quickly it was happening. The mass displacement of an entire species across dimensional layers was creating gravitational anomalies that affected both realities. Captain In-suk Bae stood on the bridge of the Council exploration ship, Unity's Hope, staring at the region that had once been human space. The ship was a joint effort between all remaining Council species, built from their best surviving technology. It was humanity's former territory that they needed to investigate, but getting there was becoming increasingly dangerous. "Captain, we are approaching the edge of what the crews are calling the Silent Void," reported Navigator Jacksnall, one of the few Zephyrians who could still plot accurate courses through space. "All ships report the same thing. Instruments start malfunctioning. As soon as we get close." In-suk nodded grimly. She was Korean American, one of the few humans who had been away from the solar system during the Exodus. The Council had asked her to lead this mission because she understood both human technology and the current crisis. "Take us in slowly," she ordered. "Monitor all systems and be ready to retreat if necessary." As the Unity's Hope crossed into the Silent Void, strange things began to happen. The ship's sensors detected impossible readings, energy signatures that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The navigation computer began displaying star charts that showed systems in locations where space appeared completely empty. Engineer Veltar of the Valdorian Empire was monitoring the ship's gravitational sensors when he noticed something that made his blood freeze. "Captain, gravity is not working correctly here. We are reading massive gravitational fields, but there is nothing visible to create them." Dr. Kivtan, the young Nexari scientist, was studying quantum readings from the void. "The dimensional barriers are damaged here," she reported. "I am detecting energy bleeding through from parallel space layers. It is as if reality itself has been torn." The crew began experiencing psychological effects that no one had expected. Chief Medical Officer Yolamesh reported that crew members from different species were having the same dreams. Visions of vast human cities existing in impossible geometries, glimpses of technology that operated on principles their science considered impossible. The dreams are not random, Yolamesh told Captain Insuk. Every crew member sees the same things. Humans living in floating cities that exist in multiple dimensions at once, ships that travel by bending space-time instead of moving through it, and machines that seem to think for themselves. As they penetrated deeper into the silent void, the Unity's hope encountered something unprecedented: derelict human ships that had been left behind during the Exodus. But these ships were not normal human vessels. They showed design features and technology far beyond what humanity had possessed when they left. "This cannot be right," said Jexnall as he studied the scans of a human destroyer. "This ship shows engineering advances that should take centuries to develop. How could humans have built this in just 1 year?" Dr. Kivtan had a theory that frightened everyone. What if time works differently in the parallel dimension? What if 1 year here equals much longer there? The humans could have had decades, or even centuries, to develop new technology. The exploration continued, but the crew was becoming increasingly disturbed by what they found. Abandoned human research stations contained equipment that alien scientists could not identify. The technology was so advanced that it seemed almost magical. Captain Insuk began to understand why Dr. Sung-Woo Kim had included such a strange message in his final transmission before humanity's departure. "We are not running away, we are graduating." The council had thought it was just human arrogance. Now it seemed like a warning. The psychological effects on the crew were getting worse. The shared dreams were becoming more vivid and detailed. Crew members reported seeing human cities that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, connected by bridges made of pure energy. They saw humans working alongside alien species that no one in normal space had ever encountered. The humans found other refugees, Dr. Kivtan realized during one of the crew meetings. The parallel dimension is not empty. Other species went there to escape galactic civilizations that tried to control them. This revelation was terrifying for the council representatives on the ship. If humanity had formed alliances with unknown, alien species in the parallel dimension, they might return as part of a much larger and more powerful coalition. The ship's communication systems began picking up strange signals from the void. The transmissions were clearly artificial, but they did not match any known communication protocols. When the ship's computers tried to decode them, the results were disturbing. "The signals appeared to be scanning us," reported Communications Officer Jexnall. "Something is studying our ship, our technology, and our crew." Captain Insuk made the decision to attempt contact. "This is Captain Insuk Bey of the Council ship Unity's Hope. We are conducting a peaceful exploration mission. Please identify yourself." The response came immediately, but not through the ship's communication system. Instead, the message appeared directly on every computer screen throughout the ship, written in perfect galactic standard language. "Greetings, Captain Bey. We have been expecting you. This is Admiral Junki Park of the Human Dimensional Fleet. We have been monitoring your approach since you entered the void." The name meant nothing to the alien crew members, but Captain Insuk recognized it immediately. Junki Park had been one of humanity's most promising young officers before the Exodus. Now he was apparently commanding fleets in the parallel dimension. "Admiral Park, we need to speak with human leadership about the crisis in normal space. The galactic civilization is collapsing without human technology." "We are aware of the situation," came the reply. "We have been observing normal space through the dimensional barriers. The collapse was predicted and is proceeding according to our models." This response chilled everyone on the bridge. The humans had not just abandoned galactic civilization, they had calculated exactly how it would fall apart and were watching it happen. "Admiral, billions of beings are dying as technological systems fail. Can humanity help?" There was a long pause before the response came. Captain Bey returned to Council space and delivered this message. "Humanity will consider helping, but not under the old terms. The Council's age of dominance is over. If galactic civilization is to be saved, it must be rebuilt according to new principles." "What principles?" Captain Insuk asked. cooperation instead of control, network integration instead of hierarchical dominance, true partnership instead of restricted development. The galaxy must choose evolution or extinction. The transmission ended, leaving the crew of the Unity's hope in stunned silence. The humans were offering to help, but only if the galactic powers agreed to give up everything they had built over thousands of years. As the ship prepared to leave the silent void, Captain Insuk realized that humanity's departure had been only the beginning. The real test was about to begin. Could the ancient galactic powers change everything about how they thought and operated, or would they choose to let civilization collapse rather than accept human terms? The dimensional barriers were continuing to weaken, and the void was expanding. Soon it would reach the core worlds themselves. The Council had very little time to make their decision. In the parallel dimension, President Jae-sung Lee was meeting with leaders of the new alliance humanity had formed. Representatives from 6 different refugee species sat around a table made of crystallized spacetime, discussing the future of both dimensions. The galactic powers will resist change until the very end, predicted Ambassador Telnara of the Ethereal Collective, a species that had fled to the parallel dimension 3 centuries earlier. They will prefer destruction to admitting they were wrong. Then we will be ready for both possibilities, President Lee replied. Either they accept change and we help them rebuild, or they reject change and we rebuild without them. 2 years after the Exodus, the galaxy was dying. 3 species had already gone extinct as their life support systems failed completely. The Torkesh hegemony had collapsed after their military technology catastrophically malfunctioned. The proud Kelrathi had abandoned their homeworld when their atmospheric processors stopped working. The ancient Zerathi had simply vanished when their entire fleet was lost in hyperspace due to navigation failures. Council leader Mordak stood alone in the great chamber on Nixari Prime, looking at empty seats where representatives of the extinct species had once sat. The Nexus Gate network was failing completely now, with only 3 gates still operational. Soon the remaining species would be isolated on their homeworlds, cut off from each other as galactic civilization crumbled into separate pieces. President Hae-Young Shin of the surviving Karathi Federation was the first to break the silence that had lasted for months. Her people were living in emergency shelters as their terraformed worlds became uninhabitable. "We need to send a formal message to humanity," she said, her voice heavy with defeat. "Not a demand, not a negotiation, a plea." The remaining council members looked at each other with expressions of despair and resignation. Ambassador Thexril of the Zephyrians nodded slowly. "My people are stranded on our homeworld. Our ships cannot safely navigate between stars anymore. We have no choice." Engineer Veltar of the Valdorian Empire stood up, his massive frame showing the weight of exhaustion. "Our industrial civilization is gone. We are mining with hand tools like our ancestors did 10,000 years ago. The Valdorian Empire has become a collection of isolated mining camps." The message they composed was simple and desperate. To the human people in the parallel dimension, we were wrong. We understand now that we need you more than you need us. The galaxy is dying. Please come back. Please. The transmission was sent through the dimensional barriers using the last functioning quantum communicator, a device that had been quietly upgraded by human engineers years earlier. The response came 3 days later, not as a transmission but as a fleet of ships materializing in normal space. The vessels that appeared above Nexari Prime were unlike anything anyone had ever seen. They were clearly human in design, but they incorporated technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics. The ships moved without visible propulsion, shifted between dimensions at will, and seemed to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Admiral Jun Ki Park contacted the council chamber directly, his image appearing in the air above the conference table through some form of projection technology that the aliens could not understand. "Council leader Mordak," Admiral Park said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who commanded vast fleets across multiple dimensions. "We received your message. Humanity is prepared to help save galactic civilization, but we come with conditions that are not negotiable." Mordak, despite being one of the oldest and most powerful beings in the galaxy, found himself feeling like a child before this human admiral. "What are your conditions?" "The council system is finished," Park replied simply. "The age of species controlling other species is over. We will help rebuild galactic civilization as a true federation of equals, where every species contributes, according to their abilities and benefits according to their needs." President Hae-Young Shin leaned forward. "What does that mean practically?" A new voice answered her. Ambassador Yujin Nam appeared in the projection, standing beside Admiral Park. She had been one of humanity's most skilled diplomats before the Exodus, and now she carried herself with the confidence of someone representing a civilization that had transcended its original limitations. "It means that the galaxy will be restructured around cooperation instead of domination," Yujin explained. "No more restricted development for younger species. No more trade barriers designed to protect established powers. No more military threats to enforce compliance with council decisions. Technology and knowledge will be shared freely between all species. Resources will be distributed based on need rather than political power. Most importantly, every species will have an equal voice in decisions that affect galactic civilization." The council members exchanged glances. These terms meant giving up everything their civilizations had been built on for thousands of years. But the alternative was the complete collapse of galactic civilization. "What guarantee do we have that humanity will not simply become the new dominant power?" asked Veltar. Admiral Park smiled for the first time during the conversation. "Because we are not returning alone." The space around Nexari Prime suddenly filled with ships. Hundreds of vessels appeared, representing species that none of the council members had ever seen before. The ships used technology that incorporated principles from multiple dimensional layers, creating designs that were both beautiful and impossible. "We have formed an alliance with 6 other species in the parallel dimension," Yujin explained. "Refugees from galactic civilizations that faced similar crises in the past. Together, we represent a new model of interspecies cooperation." Ambassador Telnara of the Ethereal Collective appeared in the projection, her energy-based form shifting through colors that conveyed emotions alien species could barely comprehend. "My people fled to the parallel dimension 3 centuries ago. When our galaxy's dominant species attempted to harvest our life force, we learned to build civilization based on mutual support rather than exploitation." Captain Nixvaron of the Quantum Nomads spoke next, his crystalline form refracting light into complex patterns. "Our species discovered the parallel dimension, when our home galaxy was consumed by machines built by a civilization that prioritized efficiency over life. We learned that true progress comes from diversity, not uniformity." The revelations continued as each refugee species told their story. Every one of them had fled galactic civilizations that had become too rigid, too controlling, or too focused on maintaining power rather than solving problems. "Humanity was the newest member of our alliance," Admiral Park explained. "But humans brought something unique, the ability to integrate with existing systems and improve them gradually. That is why we were able to help save galactic civilization instead of simply replacing it." President Hae-Young Shin realized the full scope of what was being offered. "You are not just proposing to fix our technology. You are offering to completely rebuild how galactic civilization works." "Exactly," Yujin confirmed. "The old way of thinking, that some species are naturally superior to others, has always led to collapse. The new way requires everyone to contribute their unique abilities to solve common problems." The terms were extensive and revolutionary. The Nexus Gate network would be rebuilt using dimensional folding technology that could connect not just different star systems, but different dimensional layers. This would allow for vastly expanded exploration and resource access. Each species would maintain sovereignty over their home systems, but all would participate in a true galactic federation, with rotating leadership and shared decision-making. Technology would be developed cooperatively, with each species contributing their unique perspectives and abilities. Most importantly, the new federation would actively seek out and welcome younger species instead of restricting their development. The goal would be to prevent future crises by ensuring that all species could reach their full potential. The process of rebuilding would take decades, but it began immediately. Human ships began restoring failing life support systems on worlds across the galaxy. The Refugee Alliance shared advanced manufacturing technology that could produce the tools needed for reconstruction. Dr. Hai-Jin Park led teams of engineers from multiple species in rebuilding the Nexus Gate network, using principles that incorporated the best ideas from 7 different civilizations. The new gates could not only transport ships between star systems, but also move resources and even information across dimensional barriers. Within 6 months, trade routes were reopening between formerly isolated star systems. Planets that had been abandoned due to failing terraforming systems were restored to habitability. Species that had faced extinction were given the technology and resources they needed to rebuild their civilizations. The transformation was not without challenges. Many individuals from the traditional powers struggled to accept equal status with species they had considered inferior. Some military leaders attempted to maintain the old hierarchies through force. But the new alliance was prepared for this. Resistance. When Valdorian extremists attempted to seize control of their rebuilt mining operations, they found that the technology simply would not work for them. The new systems required cooperative input from multiple species to function properly. Council leader Mordak, now simply one representative among many in the new Galactic Federation, stood before the rebuilt assembly 5 years after humanity's return. Representatives from 47 different species filled the chamber, with more joining each year as exploration expanded into new dimensional layers. 5 years ago we thought we ruled the galaxy, he said in his farewell address before retirement. We believed that age and power gave us the right to control younger species. We were wrong about everything. Today, our civilization is stronger than it has ever been. We explore not just new star systems,